Get ready. Now we're going to read about Helen Keller. Who was Helen Keller? We're going to read about it. A Life of Learning. Helen Keller was a famous writer and speaker. She couldn't see or hear, but she loved learning. She learned to read, write, and talk. Early life. Helen was born on June 27th, 1880. She was born in Alabama. Her parents were Captain Arthur Keller and Kate Adams Keller. So she was born a little bit after Abraham Lincoln. Helen was healthy when she was born. She could see and hear. In 1882, she got very sick. She was only 19 months old, so she was almost 2 years old when she became very sick. Being very sick made Helen blind. It also made her deaf. She couldn't see or hear anymore. Could you imagine not being able to see or hear? Life was very hard for Helen while she was growing up. She had trouble understanding the world around her. A great teacher. Helen's parents wanted to bring a teacher to their house to help Helen. In 1887, Anne Sullivan came to live with Helen and her parents. Here's Anne Sullivan. She was Helen's teacher, and she lived with her. Anne was a great teacher. During her first month with Helen, Anne taught her to spell words with her hands. This is called sign language. So you can see over here, this is a way that people communicate. If they can't hear, then they can communicate with their hands. It's called sign language. Learning new things. At first, Helen didn't know what the words meant. Then, Anne helped Helen feel things while Anne was spelling words. Helen loved learning new words. She learned 30 words during one day with Anne. Helen was a very smart girl. Helen learned to read even though she couldn't see the words. She read by feeling raised dots on a page. The dots spelled words. This is called Braille. So instead of reading a book, since she couldn't see, she would put her hand on the Braille and the bumps would make words. So instead of reading the words, she felt the words with her fingers. Helen learned to talk too. She put her hands on her teacher's mouth because she couldn't hear anyone speaking. She learned by feeling. In 1889, Helen moved to a city in Massachusetts called Boston. She went there to go to school. Anne went with her. Helen loved school. She went to college in 1900. She went to a special college for women. Helping others. Helen wanted to help other people who were blind and deaf too. She raised money to help them. Best friends. Helen's best friend was her first teacher, Anne. They lived and traveled together until Anne died in 1936. Wow. They lived together her whole life. They were best friends. A Great Life. Helen died on June 1st, 1968. She showed the world that deaf and blind people can do great things. So she changed life for other people that were blind and deaf. She showed them that deaf and blind people could do great things just like people who could hear and see normally. We're going to talk about her contributions in a little bit, so I want you to think about how did she help our country a better place? What was her contribution?